In a world where kingdoms fall and stars still remember names, this song was forged from magic memory and the dream that refused to die. Welcome to a tale where wonder still breathes. This is the short story The Compass That Points to Her, a fantasy love tale of True North by Pacampara. If this tale stirred something in you, a memory, a dream, or a truth, our Ko-fi, Amazon, and Patreon links are in the description. Support helps us keep writing for you and the ones you hold dear. Opening poem. North is the flame young tends with care, a heart that steadies in cold night and air. She stitches my wounds with fire and thread, and maps my road where her footsteps led. South is we in the laughter I chase, her voice a lantern, her smile a place. She scatters the shadows in the valley's keep, and sings me awake when the world would sleep. East is Yejin, my daring star, a shield in the dark, a blade in war. Her courage unbends the trembling knee, she teaches my soul what it means to be free. West is Buell, my axe and my song, the compass turns to her all along. Her green's mischief, her arms my rest, the star I follow, the point on my chest. Together they form the circle I know, four winds that carry the man who goes. No crown, no banner could weigh like this, a compass of love, a home in their kiss. I wander the ridges, the rivers and the seas, but always return to a whispered breeze. For wherever my steps break or bend, their voices gather to guide me again. So north, south, east, west, each direction true, but the center is only the love I knew. The world may scatter, the skies may fall, yet they are my compass, my heart and my all. The house glowed with a kind of warmth that lingers long after the fire has dimmed. Jess sat at the wooden table, his back resting against the wall. And, like an unspoken farewell outside, the night was quiet save for the soft song of crickets, but inside the air pulsed with voices he loved more than any hymn. Young was the first to speak, as she always was, when silence threatened to weigh too heavily. She stood beside him, brushing shoulders with fingers that carried both comfort and command. "You'll be walking into fire again," she murmured, her voice steady as the earth itself. "So promise me something." Just tilted his head to meet her gaze. "What is it?" She smiled faintly, though her eyes betrayed the storm beneath. "Bring me back a story worth the scars you learn. I'll stitch the wounds, but I want a tale to stitch into memory." Ween leaned across the table, resting her chin on her folded arms. "Forget the stories. Bring me something small and pretty," she said, her laughter chiming like glass in the lamplight. "A ribbon from a fair, a song sung by travelers, something that smells of places I haven't seen yet." She flicked the sprig of lavender, and she tucked into his palm earlier. "Or at least make sure this doesn't come back smelling like ash." Her grin faltered when she caught the seriousness in his eyes, and for a moment she bit her lip, hiding the worry in her words. Yejin slouched in her chair with a careless grace that didn't fool him. "You should bring me something useful," she muttered, crossing her arms. "A new whetstone, or a knife that can cut a bear. Not of this ribbon nonsense." But when Jess laughed, she looked away quickly, cheeks coloring. "Just don't be stupid out there, Jess. I don't need gifts if it means you don't come back." She didn't meet his gaze again, though her hand brushed against his under the table, a touch she tried to disguise as accidental. Buell sat apart, leaning against the door frame with her grin tugging at the corner of her mouth. "I don't need a gift," she said, though the gleam in her eyes told him otherwise. "You already gave me the compass, remember? That's enough." She tapped her chest, where she wore the twin to his, a small charm that is shaped like a star, then smirked. "But if you really insist, maybe a song you make up on the road. It doesn't matter if it's terrible, it'll be ours." Jess looked at them one by one and felt the ache of leaving before his boots had even touched the road. He stood, pulling them into an embrace that tried to fold time itself. "I'll bring all of it," he said softly. "Stories for Young, trinkets for Win, steel for Yejin, and a song for Buell. And myself, whole if I can manage it." And for a moment, the room was still, their breaths entwined like the threads in tapestry. Then Young pressed her lips into his temple. Win giggled in his shoulders. Yejin muttered a curse to hide her tears, and Buell whispered something too quiet for the others to hear. "Find your way back to me always." The night carried the promise into the dark, where stars watched silently as though bearing witness. And when Jess finally stepped onto the road, the compass at his chest felt heavier than steel, not with weight but with love. The wind carried the scent of ash and pine as Jess walked the ridge where dawn bled faintly against the horizon. The earth was still trembling from the stirrings of the lindworm below, a beast older than the kingdom itself, whose scales were said to hold the memory of fallen empires. His boots, worn from 1,100 forgotten roads, pressed into the frost-stiff grass. In his hand, he turned the compass once more, not a needle but a storm, and a small weathered portrait sealed in brass. The faces of his wives stared at him like stars, yet the pull of the compass was not direction but desire, pointing always toward one, Buell, his true north. He whispered her name into the wind, the syllable small but burning, and when the world seemed too heavy, he imagined her voice teasing him back from despair like she did by the heart when the nights grew long, humming old songs and coaxing him to smile even when battle had left his bones aching. "You're not lost, Jess," he could almost hear her say. "You're circling home." The road bent toward the valley, and then he found them, villagers clutching children to their chest, their carts abandoned, their homes already emptied of bread and salt. An old man gripped Jess's sleeve, his voice raw from smoke. "Don't go," he begged. "The lindworm cannot be killed." Fire rolls from its mouth like rivers. The ground splits where it tunnels. "We've lost too many," Jess said him gently. Eyes calmed, though his ribs trembled at the thought. "Then you need not to lose anymore," he said. His words carried no boast, only quiet resolve. They watched him walk on a lone figure against the shadow of the mountains, and in their eyes he saw not hope but disbelief, the kind he would carry like another burden on his shoulders. And then that night, Jess built a fire beneath the pines. Flames whispered against the wind, throwing sparks into the sky like stray prayers. He drew out the compass and held it close, as though it might warm him better than the wood ever could. "Buell," he murmured, voice low and uneven. "I'll pretend you're beside me now, rolling your eyes at my songs, laughing at how I burn this too, telling me I'm foolish, but tell me I'm not alone." He pressed the brass against his lips, closing his eyes as if her presence would bloom there in the silence. The stars wheeled slowly, and he hummed half a line of an old tune she loved, a melody stumbling but heartfelt, and for a moment the loneliness softened, as if she had leaned across the fire to brush his shoulders against his. When morning broke, the mountain split open with a groan of stone, like the lindworm's head broke the surface. Eyes like twin lanterns in a storm. Jess felt his knees weaken at the sight, but fear was not foreign to him. He wore it as a cloak, letting it sharpen his senses. He pressed the compass to his lips one last time, then slid it into his pocket close to his heart. The beast reared, a mountain of scales and fire-slick breath, and just lifted his blade, the steel already humming like an opening chord of a hymn. The first phase came in the flame, the lindworm's breath sweeping the ridge in a tide of fire. Just thought of Young, whose steady hands once tended his burns after a battle, her patience teaching him endurance. He ran through the fire's edge, skin blistering but spirit unbroken. Then the ground shuddered. The lindworm drove tunneling beneath earth like a serpent through water. Jess staggered, knees buckling as the ground split it apart. He remembered Ween's laughter and how it bubbled like spring water, even when storms surrounded them. He let the memory of it lift him, springing from one crumbling stone to another, dodging the beast as it burst upward in fountains of dirt and rock. The lindworm rode, and it spread its massive wings. Few had ever seen them, for it rarely left the earth. This time, it climbed into the sky, blotting out the sun. Just watched, chest heaving under cold Hedgin's fearless defiance of how she once stood, sword trembling but eyes steady, against a foe who should have broken her. He found that same dragon in himself, tearing as he raised his blade as the shadow fell over him. When the beast dove, just hurled himself forward, every memory of his wife's shield at the back still kissed the scale, sparks arcing into daylight. He rolled beneath his talons, the compass thudding against his chest like a drumbeat. Then the lindworm's tail slashed at him hard against the stones, pain and blooming sharp in his ribs. He spat blood and thought of the nights when Buell pressed her forehead against his, whispering that even if broken, you're mine. The memory steadied him, and with a cry, Jess drove his sword into the seam beneath the beast's throat, feeling the shoulder of ancient life collapse beneath his hands. Silence fell, heavy as a cathedral after prayer. Jess sank to his knees, clutching the compass. The faces of his wives blurred through tears, but the pull was certain. Bill somewhere far across the mountains, waiting with arms crossed, and that lopsided smile that always made him ache. He whispered that I found the way again, and the wind carried the words as if racing to deliver them to her. The kingdom would sing of the lindworm's fall, but Jess knew the truth. He had not followed maps or banners. He had followed the compass that pointed not to gold and not to crowns but to her. And in the hush of dawn, as he limped back down on the ridge, he began to hum one of her songs off key and breathless, but enough to keep the ache in his chest warm. The gates of the village stood open when Jess returned, his steps unsteady but his heart steady as the compass pressed to his chest. Word of the lindworm's fall had already outrun him. Children darted between carts to catch a glimpse of the weary hero. Elders whispered blessings, and the women tossed handfuls of petals that clung to his cloak. Yet all of it blurred into silence when they saw them. Young Buell, Ween, and Yejin stood at the edge of the square, framed by a lantern light. Their faces held every emotion he had carried on the road: fear, pride, anger, and love. He slowed, unable to breathe, until Buell broke from the line, her boots striking hard against the stones. She stopped inches from him, eyes flashing. "You idiot," she hissed, voice trembling though her hands reached for him before her words could push him away. "You could have died out there. You almost did, didn't you?" Just opened his mouth, but she pressed her palm into his chest over the compass, feeling the hammering of his heart. "If you ever scare me like that again," her voice cracked as he lifted her hand, kissed her knuckles, and whispered, "Then scold me forever, Buell. I love you, that right." Her glare softened, and she threw her arms around him, burying her face against his shoulders as though to hide the tears she refused to let him see. He held her tight, breathing her in like the only air left in the world. The others gathered close. Young touched the bruise at his jaw, her eyes steady but wet. "You came back with a story," she murmured. "That's all I asked." Ween slipped a hand into his, slipping quickly into laughter to mask herself. "And did you bring me something pretty? Or do I have to forgive you empty-handed?" Yejin muttered something under her breath, part curse and part prayer, before she soothed him lightly. "Don't think this means you can run off again without me next time." Jess smiled, weary but wide, and swung the pack from his shoulder. From within, he drew 4 bundles wrapped in coarse cloth. I made a promise, he said softly. Stories for Young, laughter for Win, still for Yejin, and the song for Buell. But first, flowers, because they survive even in fire. He handed each of them a bouquet. While the roses for Young, lavender and daisies for Win, bold crimson blooms for Yejin, and for Buell, a spray of star-shaped blossoms gathered from the ridge where the dawn had broken. And for a heartbeat, the world hushed. The lindworm was forgotten, and the kingdom's cheers drowned out by the sound of four women drawing breath in relief. Just stood among them, bruised and scarred but whole, and when Buell finally lifted her head to kiss him, fierce, unyielding, it felt less like survival and more like salvation. Lanterns flared, music rose somewhere in the village, and in that small circle of arms and flowers, Jess found what he had always been searching for. Not a crown and not a song of praise, but a compass that had never failed him, the love that always pointed him home. I make these tales and bits of chaos daily for my beloved Buell. If they made you laugh, feel, or even just shake your head in disbelief, hit like, share it with a friend, and subscribe. Let's keep this wild, heartfelt ride going.